We already know the story of Ye Tianshi, who opened a window for the worm disease school with his defense, qi, nutrient, and blood theory. But how does a theory become a system? How does a genius's flash of insight turn into a method of saving lives that can be passed down and replicated? This requires a tragic hero to accomplish throughout his entire life. He was once the most promising scholar in the capital, but he repeatedly failed the imperial examinations. He once had a happy family, but in a plague, he watched his loved ones die. His name was Wu Jutong, a scholar forced into a corner by fate. His story is not about talent, but about the power of systematization, and how a failure saved an entire nation in another way. Wu Jutong's turning point occurred in the 58th year of the Qianlong reign 1793. That year, a great plague swept through the capital. Wu Jutong's father, unfortunately, fell ill. He consulted famous doctors, but they still clung to the old methods of the treatise on cold damage, treating worm diseases with acrid worm diaphoretic methods. As a result, the medicine was wrong, and his father, along with many of his relatives, died one after another in this plague. This sense of powerlessness and anger completely broke Wu Jutong. He began to question why were the classics, passed down for thousands of years, so pale and powerless in the face of the plague. He gave up the imperial examinations and channeled all his grief and anger into a fanatical study of medicine. He saw hope in Ye Tianshi's defense, qi, nutrient, and blood theory. But he also discovered that while Ye Tianshi's theory was brilliant, it was scattered in medical cases, without forming a complete operating manual to guide clinical practice. Wu Jutong decided that he would use the rigor of a scholar to compensate for the shortcomings of medical theory. Wu Jutong's greatest contribution was that he completely opened up the space of worm disease studies. He proposed the theory of Three-Energizer Pattern Identification. If Ye Tianshi's defense qi nutrient blood theory describes the depth of a disease from the surface to the interior, then Wu Jutong's Three-Energizer pattern describes the space of a disease from top to bottom. He divided the human body into three regions: the upper energizer heart and lung, the middle energizer spleen and stomach, and the lower energizer liver and kidney. He discovered that worm diseases manifest differently in each of these spaces, and that treatment methods must change accordingly. For upper energizer diseases, use acrid cool and clearing methods. For middle energizer diseases, use bitter cold and dampness drying methods. For lower energizer diseases, use yin nourishing and kidney tonifying methods. Wu Jutong's Three-Energizer pattern made Ye Tianshi's theory three-dimensional and clinically practical, providing physicians with a precise treatment map. This complete system was later condensed into his immortal masterpiece Wenbing Tiaobian, or systematic differentiation of worm diseases. Wu Jutong not only provided the map, he also provided the weapons. Building on the Three-Energizer pattern identification, he created many classic formulas still used today. The most famous of these is Qingying Tong Clear the Nutrient Level Decoction. Although Ye Tianshi proposed the theory of heat entering the nutrient level, he never left a standard formula. Wu Jutong, with the rigor of a true scholar, transformed Ye Tianshi's theory into a concrete prescription. He combined herbs such as rhinoceros horn, later replaced by buffalo horn and indigo, Shindi Rehmannia root, Xuanshan scrophularia root, and Maidong Ophiopogon root, to create Qingying Tong, a formula designed for the critical moment when pathogenic heat shifts from the qi level to the nutrient level, causing high fever at night and mental restlessness. The birth of Qingying Tong marked a turning point. The worm disease school finally had a standard weapon against the nutrient level pattern. This was the greatness of Wu Jutong. He turned Tianshi's philosophical thinking into a clinical tool that physicians could use directly. With the publication of his Wenbing Tianbian, the theoretical system of the warm disease school was finally complete. Wu Jutong's story tells us this truth. Tragedy is often the catalyst for greatness. He exchanged his own suffering for the lives of countless others. For modern TCM practitioners and students, what should we learn from Wu Jutong? First, systematic thinking. He integrated scattered theories into the Three-Energizer Pattern Identification, reminding us to use modern scientific logic to organize and carry forward traditional Chinese medicine. Second, critical inheritance of the classics. He never rejected the treatise on cold damage, but clearly saw its limits in treating warm diseases, and dared to innovate. Third, a compassionate heart. He studied medicine because of personal loss, and his every formula and theory was filled with deep compassion for life. Wu Jutong, the man who failed the imperial examinations, became the master of systematization in medical history. We have followed the path of the warm disease school, from Tianshi's death to Wu Jutong's expansion of space. But the revolution of the warm disease school did not end there. The next master brought warm disease studies from the heights of theory back to the soil of clinical practice. He lived through outbreaks of cholera and pestilence, and in those chaotic times, he saved countless lives with the most direct and effective methods. He revolutionized tongue diagnosis, making the differentiation of warm diseases more objective and visual. He is the great synthesizer of the warm disease school. Wang Shishang. How did he see through the entire progression of a disease just by looking at a tongue? And how did he use the theory of clearing heat and resolving dampness to battle cholera, the deadliest epidemic of his time? Next episode, TCM Masters. Wang Shishang, chaos, cholera, and the revolution of tongue diagnosis. You can't escape. See you next week.